Good morning, and thank you very much for joining the webinar this morning. So the focus on today is how to automate and transform finance processes. Now, this is the first in a series of webinars that we'll be holding that will talk around various different ways that we can automate processes across different business units. Today is very much going to focus on finance. At the end of the deck, at the end of the info seminar, what I'd encourage you to do is fill out a form. I'll leave a QR code, and perhaps we can decide where we would like to go from here. This will be a high-level overview of a process, a typical process within a finance department. From my side, so my name's Martin Patmore. I work in the sales team at DocuWare. I've been with DocuWare for around about 2 years now. Prior to that, I worked in a company called Wolters Kluwer that provide accountancy-based solutions. I've also worked for Xero, launching Xero in the UK market, and I've been involved in finance systems and finance processes since around about 2000 with IBM Notes and Lotus Domino, if anybody is old enough to remember those. So what we'll be focusing on today is three particular processes, three particular areas within a finance department where we typically see challenges when we work with businesses. Many businesses find that with the amount of information that they have coming into the business, the information should be right there, but you're spending far too much time looking for it. It might be in various different systems. It might be hard to find. It might be hard to get into a system in the first place. Quite often, there's still an awful lot of manual data entry involved. That's obviously time consuming. That's obviously boring. I say it's obviously boring. It certainly was to me. I took AAT up to level 2 before I decided that my attention to detail was awful. And I'd much rather be doing other things. And I'm sure that's the case for many other people as well. Now, alongside the manual data entry and alongside the difficulty in finding information and getting information into systems is often a process. So quite often, process is manual, and it might be paper-based forms still, would you believe? It might be Excel spreadsheets, which is still a manual process. It might just be a case of pieces of paper being passed around the building and literally walked around the building for different people to sign off and different people to chase. Now, from a person's point of view, from a people point of view, this means more pressure, unnecessary pressure on this day and age, on people having to do things manually, having to check spreadsheets. Quite often in a business, there's a custodian of the spreadsheet. If the person leaves or the formulas in the spreadsheet break, that leads to more issues, that leads to more work for people to deciding to have to recreate a process. Quite often, when there's manual information being input into systems and there's people that are stretched to do more and spend more time on doing things that could be automated, we start to see errors. Now, this might be duplicate invoices. This might be duplicate delivery notes. This might be purchase orders missing. And this goes back to adding more stress on the people actually doing the work. But not only that, there's the financial implications as well. So in finance, that's clearly that your balance sheet or your P&L could be out. If you was looking at DocuWare in other areas of the business, it might be health and safety, for example. It might be that if you had a health and safety certificate that was out of date and somebody didn't have their forklift license, it was out of date, there was an accident, there might be further implications for a business as well. So all of these problems evolve from one problem into another. The difficulty in managing the information could be exasperated by a manual or complex process that's time consuming, which can put more stress on people to actually do what they should be doing. And worst case scenario, I guess, actually leaving the business to join somebody else because they no longer wanted to work in that environment. And then, of course, the errors and the financial implications attached to that. So one such process within a finance department where we see this time and time again might be a typical, well, purchase to pay process. Typically within a business, there'll be a requisition raised by somebody. It could be a CapEx, could be OpEx, could just be a purchase requisition. This is a manual process in many businesses. So it might be a form, it might be an Excel document, it might even just be an email, which will need to be approved by somebody. And that's a time-consuming process. The approval might be by email, it might be by a more formal means. And a purchase requisition will be converted ultimately into a purchase order, typically handled by an ERP system, so outside of the email or outside of the Excel or outside of the Word document that you've already created. So again, manual data entry. Purchase order will be sent through to your supplier, quite often automated at that stage. The receipt of the goods will be received. That'll often have a delivery note attached to it, or a consignment note, or multiple delivery notes, again, a paper-based document. So this will need to be entered in some way into a system, or perhaps scanned and stored within the SharePoint or a shared folder of some kind, and ultimately matched to an invoice. Again, that might be electronic, so yet another system. It might still be sent through the post. But either way, there's a reconciliation process between making sure that the invoice that's received matches the goods that was ordered and what was actually delivered. Any discrepancies is a manual process, typically done during the reconciliation stage. And ultimately, the invoice will need to be approved. It will need to be signed off prior to payment. Otherwise, we go back to the overpayment of invoices and the mistakes happening in the finance department. So this is just one process, right, in a typical finance department. And from here, we can see where the various bottlenecks will start to appear, whether that's the time spent chasing approvals, whether it's the time spent typing information, either from an invoice or from a delivery note or from the requisition in the first place into some kind of system. And we haven't even touched on finding the documents when it comes to audit time. So your auditors turn up, the pressure's on. They ask you for a copy of an invoice dating back to 2017 for a particular order that you've got no record of. Where do you find that documentation? So at DocuWare, we can help with these three particular challenges. We can help with the document management side of things. So when we talk about document management, traditionally, we might be talking about a place where we can store documents and make them easily able to easily find those documents. But in this day and age, it goes a lot more than that. What we can actually do is capture the information from documents. So we can read a document, we can capture that information, we can extract that information. To take some steps one step further, we can also classify that information as well. So if you received a bundle of documents from one of your suppliers, so maybe you had a contract, a thank you letter, an invoice, a delivery note, all in the one bundle, we could actually split that document up and assign it to different people within a business for some kind of further action to take place. What we can do is connect to other applications as well. So if we're extracting the data from invoices, if we're extracting the data from delivery notes, it's great that we can hold it in DocuWare. It's great that we can easily find that during audit times or month-end times, or when you really need to quickly and easily find that information. But what we can also do is connect to other applications to save the manual data entry between different types of systems. And its simplest form, that might be email, capturing information from attachments in email or capturing information from emails themselves, populating DocuWare and then populating a third-party system. Once we have this information coming in, we've got some insights into the business. So we might want to identify all purchase orders that have been open for 30 days, all invoices that have been unpaid for 7 days, all invoices or documents of any kind that haven't been approved that we need to approve, and we need to find out where the bottleneck is. At the moment, I've just been talking about a finance department, but DocuWare allows you to seamlessly collaborate with other areas of your business. So you might want everybody within operations having access to certain types of documents. You might want to be able to track expense claims and everybody throughout your business being able to raise expense claims, but not have access to your financial information. You might want everybody to have access to contracts relating to your customers, relating to your suppliers, but not necessarily see the financial information. As a central repository, DocuWare allows collaboration against multiple teams. So what I will do at this stage is I will log back in again. There'll be the pressure of typing in your password in front of a room full of people. You wouldn't believe how bad that is. So what I'm doing, I'm going to jump into DocuWare and we'll walk through an example of some of the challenges that we spoke about just a moment ago. So looking at DocuWare here. DocuWare is a web-based solution, so we can log into DocuWare anywhere where we have internet access. As it happens, I'm using Chrome today. You could choose to use Firefox, any other web browser, even a mobile phone for that matter. I am looking at a DocuWare environment, and if I log into it, let me log in as an administrator. Along the top here, just to explain what's going on along this menu, these menu bars. So we work with a concept called document trays, and document trays allow us to receive information and group them together. In my case, I have invoices. Over on the left here, if I click on an invoice, I can see a preview of the invoice over on the right. And I have 4 different invoices sitting in a document tray that I've named accounting. You might choose to have different document trays within your business. So in this fictitious example, I've got some general documents, so perhaps contracts. I've got some documents that are waiting for a digital signature to be sent out to a customer or a supplier for signature. And I'm using this environment for HR as well. I'll talk about the search functionality, lists and tasks as I move through this quick overview. But with the documents that are sitting in my document tray, I can bring these in from a number of different areas. So I can import the documents, clicking on import and perhaps bringing them in from a shared folder. I could scan them in and they'd appear directly within DocuWare. I could watch an email folder. So every time an invoice is received at invoices at, it would automatically end up in my accounting, in this case, document tray. I can link through to third-party applications as well, as I mentioned previously. So if you raised a PO in NetSuite or Xero, for example, we could bring that information in and there we could match invoices against purchase order information in other systems as well. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to log in. So currently I'm logged in as an administrator, and due to my admin rights, the administrator has access to lots of different document trays and lots of different lists as well, for that matter. A list is a way of reporting on information across the business. So the administrator can see information relating to accounting, to HR, to digital signatures. I'm just going to change my user. I'm going to log in as a different user. So Peggy works in my accounts team, and Peggy is responsible for processing invoices. Peggy doesn't need access to the HR functionality, therefore she doesn't have access to different document trays, and she can't search for HR functionality neither, because I've locked this down at the security level. If I hover over my invoices, I can see some high-level information that has been captured from that invoice at the moment we receive that invoice. I can tell it's been captured because one, it's populated. So next to company, it tells me the company name, but also it's green. So we've got a really high confidence level that the information that's been captured is actually correct. What I can do from here is choose my documents, click on store, and we can check the information that's actually been captured by this document. So we can see that it's a document type. We know it's a document type because we're recognizing the supplier name. So we know that it's an invoice because I've captured information from this type of invoice previously. We can see the company name's been captured. We can see the document number has been captured. It's reading the document date. And I've set myself, in fact, I'm going to change that. And I'm going to set a reminder date for today. So it might be that for this document in my business, all information or all invoices that are received for catering need to be approved by somebody. And Peggy would like to set herself a reminder that on this particular date, she receives a reminder to chase the approver if it hasn't already been paid, or it hasn't been approved rather. So for my approver list, what I'm going to do is choose a different user. We'll choose Elizabeth, and I'm going to click on store. So similar concept with this particular document. So if, in fact, again, we've read the majority of the information. I can see that the company is international still, but if the invoice number, if the document number was actually missing, rather than typing this information in, what I can do is highlight it with my mouse and it will populate it for me. Again, in most cases, we're eliminating the manual data entry because we're reading the entire document. But if information is missing, we don't have to type it in, we just need to select it with our mouse. I'm going to leave the reminder date as today, and I'm going to choose a different approver for this particular invoice. I'm going to choose Peter Ken, and I'm going to click on store. Again, similar concept. It's a nice white invoice. So if I highlight the invoice number, we can see where that's being picked up. I'm going to say that this invoice doesn't need approval. I'm happy with that. I'm going to click on store. And then finally, for this particular invoice for Phone Wizard, perhaps I'd like Elizabeth to approve this. I won't set a reminder date. I will leave it with her, and I'm going to click on store. So very quickly and very easily, we've captured information from documents. I'm talking about invoices in this case, but this might be any type of document that comes into the business or leaves the business. What happens along the top here is we start to see tasks generated. So as I process those documents, a task has been generated for Peggy. The reason that task has been generated is if I was to click on the task, I can see that in the background, I've built some business rules relating to this invoice. So one of the challenges that I spoke about earlier was mistakes within a finance department. One of the things we might want to look for within a finance department is duplicate invoices. And that's something that we can see within this particular demo environment. So here's my original document. Document is telling me that something matches. If I was to right click and say show my related documents, I can see that previously this document that's already been processing and already sitting in my system. In real life, what I could do is open that up into a separate screen, but I've only got one today, so that would make for a really boring demo. So what I would do from here is with this document, I'm just going to reject it. I'll click on confirm. And that's that document taken care of. Under my lists, what I can now see, so a list is again a way of grouping information together. I can see that under my reminders, I've got 3 documents that I've been reminded about. If I click on that list, I can see that 2 of those documents are waiting for approval, one by Peter, one by Elizabeth. If I was to log in as a different user, so what will happen, just to explain what will happen, typically within a business, this is a manual process. Perhaps there's an Excel spreadsheet that shows this information. Perhaps people have to send multiple emails, make multiple phone calls, even run around the factory trying to get approval for these invoices or check whether it's okay to pay, so we don't end up making overpayments, especially with a figure like this. What will happen with DocuWare is this person and this person will receive an email telling them that they have something waiting for approval. When they click on the link, in the case of Elizabeth will see a task. Elizabeth will see the document that needs approving. Elizabeth could either add some narrative down here or perhaps use a stamp and add some more narrative. And approve that particular document. In the case of Peter, so a similar kind of example, Peter receives an email. Peter can see the invoice. Peter can add some narrative. Click on confirm. If I was now to log back in as my administrator, under my lists, I can see that I've got a number of invoices that are now waiting to be exported through to my bookkeeping software. What we could do from here, either on in real time or perhaps on an hour or a daily basis, is send these through to whatever bookkeeping software you have, again, eliminating the manual data entry. Now, from an audit point of view, what would happen? If somebody within the business wanted to find these documents, or somebody within the business perhaps wanted to, perhaps an auditor wanted to find a copy of a document, what we can use is the search functionality. So these fields would all be customizable. These are just typical fields that I've got built into my demonstration. What I could do is search perhaps by document type. So if I wanted to find all the invoices, I could. If I wanted to search by company, I could. If I wanted to search in between dates, I could. So perhaps I want to find all invoices by International Steel from 2017 to 2019. I could build up my search. What I could also do is use a full text search, because although I'm only reporting on these fields, we actually capture information from the entire document. And if I was to type in Bolt, any document where the word Bolt appears, I'd be able to find that information very quickly, very easily. If I jump back into my search functionality and take a look at the documents that I've stored today, what we can see is the documents. We can see who approved these documents really quickly, really easily. If I was to right click on the document itself, in fact, let me open up the document, and we can see the narrative on the document as well, for that matter. So we can see that it was approved by Peter on this particular date. If I was to right click here and click on my history, I've got a complete audit trail of when the document was processed, who it is approved by, at what time it was approved as well. So very quickly, very easily, I can search for documents. I can find a complete audit trail relating to that document. So what I will do is let me jump back into this screen here. So what we've taken a look at today is really 7 steps on where we can maximize the efficiency in one particular process with automation. We've looked at how we can capture the information from documents really quickly, really easily. This eliminates the manual data entry, which is boring and typically where errors occur. I've looked at one particular workflow. So one particular manual task where people can choose who needs to approve a document. We can automate that further based on all sorts of business rules. It might be cost center, it might be by supplier, it might be value, it might be variance to order value, all sorts of things we can take a look at and we can automate there. I've looked at how once that information has been captured from your documents and we've eliminated the manual data entry, we can export that through to a third-party system. It might be Xero, it might be NetSuite, it might be Microsoft Dynamics, whatever it is you use. If we've captured the information, we can pass it through to another system of some kind. I didn't speak about retention rules, but we could set retention rules in the system as well. So from a GDPR point of view, or from a HMRC point of view, if you wanted them to expire after 7 days, after 7 years, then we could, of course, do that with the documents that we've captured. Today, with today's session, all I've spoken about is the one particular process within accounting. But it's important to remember that this could be used right across different business units. So from a sales point of view, we could use DocuWare anywhere where there's a document and a process that is attached to that particular document. It might be contracts, it might be sales order approvals. On a HR point of view, from a HR business unit, we could use this from onboarding to offboarding and everything in between, from performance reviews to operating procedures. Anywhere where people are involved and there's a process, DocuWare leads itself well too. From a legal point of view, so contract management and compliance, records management is another really strong use case. And purchasing as well, hand in hand on the accounting side of things. So from purchase requisitions right through to planning and reporting on purchases, DocuWare leads itself very well too. The reason being, with all of these business units, anywhere where there's documentation and anywhere where there's a process, DocuWare is great for improving. So if you've just stumbled across us, if you haven't heard of DocuWare previously, in Germany, we're certainly a household name. So we're founded in 1988 with many finance systems these days. If you go to Accountex or somewhere similar, you'll find hundreds of vendors, many startups, many haven't been around for too long. DocuWare has been here since 1988, absolutely solid and a really solid background. We're actually based in Germering in Germany, although as you can see from my accent, I'm clearly not. So there's a number of us that work in the UK, right across the UK. Also offices in the US and also in the Far East as well. In terms of the number of customers that use us, so over 20,000 customers, over 1 million users, right across 110 countries and multiple languages as well, for that matter. So where do we go from here? As I explained at the beginning, the purpose of this particular live session was a high-level overview on how DocuWare could be used, an introduction to DocuWare, and how it can solve 3 main problems within a finance department. So finding documents, avoiding manual data entry, and approving a workflow approval process. What I would ask from you is if you'd be kind enough to scan the QR code that hopefully you can see on my screen at the moment. That will take you to a DocuWare form, and it'd be really useful to find out what you'd like to see on the next event. Would you like to go into more detail on a finance department? Would you like to concentrate more on accounts payables? Are you interested in contracts? Would you rather focus on delivery note and picking slip applications? If you could click on the QR code, fill out the details, that'd be most helpful, and make sure that we're targeting the right information on these particular sessions. From my side, if there's any questions that you have after this event, then please either drop me an email. My email address you can see on the screen at the moment. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And by all means, drop me a message on there if you'd prefer. I'd be happy to help, or I'd be happy to pass that through to the correct person to be able to help. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you on a future event.